Now I'm hoping you guys don't have poachers out there. Everyone talks about poachers. That's where all their big bucks go. They disappear. Must be poachers. You hear of poachers. I mean, heck, the local bar, that's one of the talks, is the poachers that are in the area, all the deer getting poached. I think the more drunk people become at the bar, the more poachers there are out there. Everyone talks about poachers. It's just a thing. I actually have found there's really not a lot of poachers out there. And what I've also found in knowing some poachers of the past in the UP of Michigan, I mean, this is decades ago, where they actually poached for food and how they did it. And I'll give you a little story about that in a second, but you know, sometimes I talk about how many clients that I've been to, how many clients Dylan's been to. I mean, heck, Kevin Smith will be to 100 clients in his first year probably. I mean, he's already, I think he probably has 50, 60 scheduled on the books in the last couple months. Joe Youngblood's already probably scheduled 25 clients. They're already getting up there and they'll have a lot of experience too, but we talk about that experience because we can relate that to you. And what we've learned, what we can bring that back to people. And I can honestly say out of all the clients I've had, there's some specific cases where big bucks were poached in an area. And I don't even think it's a dozen times out of all the clients I've been to. Dylan, I mean, I'm talking 1 for 100 clients.
Yeah, I can for certain count on one hand, you know, how many instances I've personally heard of, you know, even beyond my clients. But, you know, it's not as common as I had once thought either.
I knew there's a district wildlife biologist down in Kentucky. I shot archery with him late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere around there. Shot in a Southern Illinois shoot with him. Great guy, his name's Joe. And he might be retired now, I'm not really sure. But he talked about working on, as a kid, as a young wildlife biologist, working on restocking programs in Kentucky because of rampant poaching. So areas where there was really aggressive bad poaching back in the 80s, 90s, they restocked those areas with deer because of the poaching in those locations. Over in Wisconsin, where we're at, in southwest Wisconsin, there was a guy that shot a giant last year, 200 and some inches. It's crazy because I know at least 2 of the neighbors. I have friends, Joe and Skip up in the UP of Michigan, they were near that area. And then I have another neighbor, his name's Kevin, in that area that had pictures of that buck. And I'm sure there's some more too. There's another Kevin in that area that might have seen or had pictures of that buck, but it was Dylan 220, 230 inches.
I can't remember the exact number, but it was a big buck.
Yeah, big one. I mean, once they get up that big, who cares? But bottom line is the guy had it on bragging boards, everything. And I don't know if it was the butcher. I hear conflicting stories, but I believe it was the butcher, taxidermist, whatever, said, hey, this wasn't shot with a crossbow. And the DNR asked him about it right away. He just came right. He wasn't a typical poacher. He was someone, I think in his 60s, 70, giant buck in the backyard chasing a doe. He had made up a story where it went and bedded down. He stalked up on it with his crossbow. He shot it, got it. Bottom line is he shot it out the window with a rifle and killed it. And as soon as the DNR asked him about it, he fessed up and said, I just couldn't help myself. And, not an excuse, but at least it didn't sound like he was a lifelong poacher. Maybe he was, but bottom line is he wasn't someone that was consistently poaching deer in the area, or he would have been caught a long time ago, because there's a lot of private land in the area, and that makes it very, very difficult. I'm going to talk about a few ways to ward off poachers and keep them away from your property. I think you'll find if you take some easy tips and really watch what you're doing, that you can insulate yourself from poachers. Because what I found is when people poach, they do so easily. They don't work really hard to go in and basically steal from someone else or steal from the state, steal from other hunters. They want something quick. And I'll go back to that decades old poacher or family of poachers. I knew a couple of families that were like that. And one of them even they had a salt lick in the woods. It could have been midsummer time. They needed food for their family. They weren't supposed to ever take bucks or really older deer. They're looking for younger deer, good tasting deer, what they thought was good tasting. They'd have a gun on encased in an inner tube on a tree by a mineral lick, drop someone off on the side of the road in a very rural area, big wooded wilderness area, thousands of acres of public land. They'd go in, they'd sneak in. If there's a deer there, they'd shoot it. They'd go in and out without a gun. And that's what they did to feed their family. I'm not saying that's right, but that was one way they did it in the past. Those times are long gone. Those people that did that, even if they're still around, that was decades ago, they were practicing that. This fence line right here, it's our property line right here. In fact, you can see this white stake out here, this white survey rod with a pink ribbon on it. This is our actually property line right here. Cuts right this way. This will all be switchgrass here pretty soon. I want this switchgrass back here because our food plot right here. You can see all the woods that are back here. All the woods are ours. You can see that are in this food plot. Deer aren't living out in this food plot. Or this ag field right here. There's no woods, there's a road right there, there's a highway up there, there's houses, barns over there. So I set myself up. If I build this big, beautiful food plot right here, and then I don't screen it well. I see this along roads. If you drive I-75 north of Flint, and you drive to the UP of Michigan, you'll see food plots right along the highway. They used to poach on 75 back in the day, and they would shoot, they'd drop someone off, they'd get the deer later, they'd come back. It was a whole system they had. They would have salivated at these food plots that are along the highway. And I'm not saying there's a lot of poachers out there. Those people are long gone, actually. But what I am saying is that in that case, if you have a food plot right next to a highway, if I have a food plot right next to this ag field and I don't take screening precautions right here, and I have a big buck chasing a doe out there, and it's an hour before dark, and there's a hunter right over here just walking these fields, and they have long distance muzzleloader, shotgun, and they see that buck out here. I'm not saying that every person that sees that big buck is going to lob a shot across property lines, but it makes it a lot easier when there's no visual barrier. When you're by a road, when you're by a field, when you can see from someone's property right across the border. So it's my duty, to me, if I don't want poachers, I need to take precautions along this, and I need to be aware that I'm setting myself up for a problem if I don't take the precautions, because I might make someone who's normally a very good person and hasn't ever poached in their life and sees a 180-inch buck running around over here, and they take that shot across property lines because they, quote, just couldn't help themselves. I think a lot of us would never poach. I'd never poach. I know Dylan would never poach. But you get into a situation where there's that person out there that they've had a bad season, whatever it might be, bad life, who knows? But it takes a person that wouldn't otherwise poach and makes them a poacher because they see that over there. I'm not making an excuse for them. Poachers are bad. I'm not making an excuse. But I'm putting the screening here to protect myself, to protect the people on the other side of the fence. And that's one major way, is get those food plots off the roads, screen them, take every precaution. We're putting the switchgrass here, and then our bank of corn starts right there. You can see all the corn stubble? That'll be 2.5 acres of corn stretched out over there 150 yards wide at the mouth of this food plot. And it's not just 10 rows deep, it's 50 rows deep, 100 rows, whatever it is. It's 2.5 acres worth. It's probably, I'd say from this point back here, it's approximately 80 yards of corn. So a lot of rows of corn, pretty deep. And so I have the switchgrass, the corn, and then we're not harvesting that corn, it's standing corn. So unless a buck is in this outside row, he can't be seen, but then we're gonna have 6-7 foot high switchgrass. You can see the switchgrass already starting to form here. The first thing we did, of course, we planted the corn, but this is switchgrass. See a little foxtail in here that we'll take care of this year, but all this color right here is all switch. This is all switchgrass. It's been sprayed with simazine so we can control some of the weeds in here, but that switch goes all the way from that line all the way out to here. So really big band of switch. All that switch will be higher than the side-by-side here. So if you look at the Kubota, that switchgrass will be this tall this year. So we're gonna block off. You can see this food plot, it starts to go downhill a little bit, so it doesn't take much elevation right here, and we completely block out the food plots in the past. So this screening right here is critical. Next, signage. We have signs on the woods here. We'll have signs on these poles. The first step was put the screening in because it takes 2 years to fully establish. We can use an HD screening blend like an annual. John Comp from Northwood Whitetail sells. It's the best screening blend you can buy. I don't say that just because I work with John, it's because that's one of the areas he specializes in. That's something we could have used in that first step. We happen to know there's no poaching taking place from this area over here. We weren't concerned with that. We're getting that place. No trespassing signs, very critical. Also, where's our access along here? Our access isn't back here where we're not only gonna spook deer, but I want my access to be out here behind the switchgrass or through the switchgrass. So our access, I want to be right here. I want switchgrass. We'd still have 16 feet of switchgrass here. We'll have another 20 feet of switchgrass here, and we'll access right through along this line. Could be that we access right here, but we're gonna access in the switchgrass. That border and that road, that 2-track that we make with our side-by-side, we can drive a pickup on it, that'll be very visible from the outside. So that perimeter road establishment, once people get in here, they think, hey, someone could drive by at any moment. Not only do they not want to set up a blind here, but they know if they cross that, it's very visible. People can see them down the road. You can see how such a straight shot this is down the fence row. Whether we're on one side of the fence or other, we can see down a long ways. So that border road is critical. The no trespassing signs, getting effective screening. And then when it comes to really following up with poachers, you never know who's going to be a poacher. I had someone in Coon Valley a long time ago. I'm out, came down for just a 1 night and 1 morning hunt because of a cold front. It's what I used to do. It was a long time ago. It was probably 2005, 2004. I seen a big buck cross the weekend before, so I just couldn't wait to hunt a certain little pinch point out in the field. Get all set up, have a 3-hour hunt in the evening, sat for about 2 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes, getting to that deer 30, that perfect hour, and then all of a sudden the side-by-side comes by with some kids in it. They come driving right by, ruin the hunt. I think I got halfway down the tree, jumped, chased them. I remember the father said the kids look back and they see this crazy man with a saw falling out in my pocket and running after him, and they of course take off. I end up my hunt was ruined. Get down, start walking through town looking for that person. Saw a piece of that side-by-side up in a garage, went and approached that person. And when you do this, folks, you can't go through there like you're loaded for bear and ready to pounce. I went up to him and wanted to see what the story was. And for one, I was able to convey that, hey, I tracked you down to your house, and I'll do that to anybody else in the city or village too. But two, that I'm hunting, the hunt was ruined. Turns out he wasn't a hunter. It was easy to see that. And to this day, I call him my friend. I have lunch with him once a month. I actually hunt on his property. I have for many years. His name's John. Really like John. We became friends throughout the years. So it can, you're really not taking that aggressive an approach to right off the bat. And what I found with someone that might be a poacher, if you take that tact and you're too aggressive, they might want to fight back. And so you're taking a tact, you're being very steady with them. You're saying, and firm. I tracked someone down in the UP of Michigan. They went through my plots 2 miles back. They had to go through private land, which was mine. Then they had to go through an access road on the federal land, which I only had access to. And then they had to go a mile back on my property. They did donuts on a food plot, came back. They had a funny looking track on their 4-wheeler. It had a center line on that tire. I went to all the turnoffs, got about 5 miles away. Went on each one of those turnoffs, found where that track went, got back to a house. The 4-wheeler wasn't there, but I asked the woman who answered the door. Sure enough, it was her son. Found out he did hunt. It could have been someone that came back and poached. I told him I wouldn't press charges. I just didn't want to ever see him again. They'd gone around a gate. They never came back. And so when you're firm with somebody, that's really critical. You have the signage, you have the screening, you have the exterior roads. But when you follow up with someone, you can't just be passive about it. And I know someone this year, they caught a trespasser on their property walking by with one of the biggest sheds on the land. They found out who it was. They asked for their shed back, and they asked them to never come on the land again. And I would be willing to bet they won't be back. Again, if you're firm, if you take precautions. And shed hunting is one thing. A lot of people that would shed hunt and steal shed hunting, they won't become poachers and actual deer hunters. I know the state of Michigan has very aggressive laws. If you actually poach a deer, it can be in the teens for thousands of dollars that you're fined depending on how many points that buck has. It actually goes up in points. If it's over an 8 point, you actually have to pay more per point. I think it goes to $750 a point instead of $500 or whatever it is. But bottom line is, between aggressively following up, being a little bit nuts. I put up reward signs in the past trying to find poachers, saying who are these poachers, and then they had goggles on, so it wasn't like I was putting a face. Reward, call this number. No one called, but it got word out in the area, especially after I knocked on doors and passed flyers out, that maybe this person's a little nuts. They are gonna really go after people. And finally, I'll leave you with trail cameras. The cell cameras are wonderful nowadays. They can get someone's demeanor coming in, what they're wearing, what they're dressed. I had someone that went through the other day. There was a trespasser in Coon Valley where I hunt over in Wisconsin, and we looked it up, and you could tell it was just a couple runners from the area. They're coming on the property. They shouldn't have been there. They're hundreds of yards into the property. The landowner was pretty aggressive with it. He wanted to find out who they were and have a chat with them. Bottom line, I wasn't really concerned. If I would have just seen footprints up there, it would have really made you wonder. So cell camera was able to tell me, hey, these people are in running gear. They don't look like there's someone that's going to be back here in hunting season. And we've seen that with video of morel mushroom hunters. I didn't like it. We've seen someone ginseng thief we had on the property. And a lot of those stories kind of go into my turn time in the Poachers book that I have for kids. Was, you know, that poaching for a lot of times, I think it's more myth and urban legend than it is fact. And especially if you take the precautions to hide your land, insulate your land, let people know you're there, put up signs, follow through with prosecution, put some cell cameras out, try to find people, almost hunt them like you're hunting a mature buck. You take those steps, you're gonna find that the poachers on your land in the future and in the area, you'll find are a lot more myth and legend than fact. And when it comes to poachers and keeping them off your land, you can do so. I think you can almost fully insulate yourself from it. And again, like Dylan was talking, what I found, and I'm sure Kevin and Joe will find, is they're going and scouring the countryside and looking at properties. The actual poaching that takes place in the country is not at a very high level, and that's a good thing for you and I when it comes time to hunt this fall. Now I'm excited again this year to host our Camp Kicking Bear charity event. Last year we did it in June, and it was a big success. We were able to raise over $21,000 for Camp Kicking Bear. There's some people that actually made comments that they get sick of hearing about this kind of stuff and whatever else. I think they didn't understand that we're actually raising money. This Camp Kicking Bear is, to me, the #1 children's organization that gets kids in the outdoors, their families, especially a lot of kids that don't have the opportunity to do so otherwise. June 11th, I'll have more details coming out about this, but you can email us for early registration. June 11th, it'd be midday, you know, like 11 to 4 type thing, 10 to 5, 10 to 4. What I do is there's 50 people that register for this. We give that all to Camp Kicking Bear. Well, it's a habitat day. We go out for a couple hours on the property and I show you some strategies that you can take home to your own land. Number 3, we have a hunt raffle for 100 people. The registration for 50 people is $300. That gets you in the door to actually see the property and the land. $100 gets you in a hunt raffle times 100 people. We had Leo from Lower Michigan had a hunt last year, many memories, end of September for a couple days. Number 4, lots of door prizes, Matthews bows, blinds. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that we give away, really good stuff for you too. Kids are free. I think we had about 25, 30 kids last year. All proceeds, again, go to Kicking Bear. Every dollar, every dime we raise goes to Kicking Bear. We'll have some other auction. Last year, Chris B came. We might have Kevin Smith, retired Major League Baseball player. I hear that Gary Suter, he's a NHL Hall of Famer. He might show up too. So there's some chance to meet there. And then, of course, Ray Howell. He was here last year. He delivered his testimony. It was an awesome, inspirational talk that he gave to everyone. Hope to see you there. Look for further details on the site and then the description for the video.